Okay, so the first thing you want to do is kind of map out where you're going to position your mannequin on your paper. To start, I would just keep your mannequin in a pretty basic pose, like arms down, feet kind of straight. Don't do anything crazy to start, just because it'll make it much easier. So when you draw your mannequin, you use the head as the basis for the drawing. So however big I make the head on the paper is going to be my measurement for the rest of the mannequin shape. So you can see here, I kind of have these lines that are just mapped out to give me some reference points. And if you were to sit and measure them, you'd probably see this one is slightly bigger, this one is slightly smaller. So it's just a general reference. Your mannequin or your human figure is 7.5 to 8 heads tall, generally speaking. And your human figure is also 3 heads wide, meaning that if I drew 2 heads on either side of the center head, my shoulders should come out to that point of that width. I hope that makes sense. So I'm just going to position my mannequin standing up in front of me. And then I'm going to go ahead and start sketching so you can see. So the first thing I'm going to do is sketch that head, right? Give myself a reference, and your head on your mannequin is approximately an egg shape. So you can go back and refine these. You'll also notice I'm holding my pencil kind of towards the back, and this is because I just want to sketch very lightly as I go. If you have your pencil held back just a little bit more, it gives you a looser pencil marks, which means that it'll be easier to erase and go back and refine. So I have 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, and 8. So as I said, 7.5 to 8 heads tall. And then I'm going to go ahead and just do a second head on the side here, approximately the same size, and one over here. And again, I'm just sketching lightly, so I'm not super worried about these. I'm going to come back in later and clean this up with my eraser. So from here, I'm looking for reference points. About halfway down the middle, right, I have 1, 2, 3, 4. This should be the bottom of the hips. And then halfway from that to the feet here should be your knees. So the knees here, and then the feet. Okay, so from here, I'm just going to go ahead and start to lightly sketch this in. Each of these round points on the mannequin represent a joint. So I'll sketch those round points in as well, just to help give me some reference. And so again, sketch lightly, because you can always come back and you can change this if as you go. So I'm not really going to put a whole lot of time into the detail right now. Just a super loose sketch to get me going, and then I'll come back later and add those details. So keeping in mind the width that I have here, so that my shoulders are approximately the width of those 3 heads here. So you can see that edge should line up nicely. Okay, so I have that basic shape in. I'm going to go ahead and add the joints here, and then come down here for the knees and connect those. So remember, your thighs have a little bit of thickness at the top, and then they narrow as they come to the knee. And then you have a little bit of thickness here at the top of your calf, and then you narrow a bit as you come down. So, and again, you can, if you draw lightly, you can always come back and edit those as needed. So for now, I'm just going to kind of put these shapes in. The other thing that we're going to do with this project is we're going to add some value. And value is the lightness or darkness of an object. And so this is what we're talking about when we talk about shading. Okay, so I'm going to put those feet in, and then go ahead and I'll start to kind of sketch here a little bit more in detail. And this foot is coming out towards me, so it's going to look slightly bigger. But I'll change these as I go. Now I do need the arms in here, so I'm going to go ahead and attach those arms. Notice where the elbow is, it comes in line with the hips there. And if you put your arm the whole way down, it's going to touch approximately just above your knee. So if you consider how long your arms really are, it's much longer than you think. My angle here has, because I have my arm of my mannequin coming out a little bit, so it's lining up with this joint here, that angle of the arm. And then the hand for these mannequins is simplified just to make it easier. And then I'll do the same on the other side here. And then once I have the basics in place, then I'm going to come back and do some value, some sketching, and some shading. And this is a little bit thinner, a little wider there. And again, I'm holding my pencil kind of back, away, to keep my drawing loose so that I don't have a lot of heavy lines or marks. And this will make it much, much easier when I go to shade or if I need to make any adjustments. Okay, so the next thing I want to do is I want to look at those reference points and see how my proportions are. So I'm looking at the scale, and this of course looks a little bit funny because the arm is so long, and my drawing isn't matching quite with my mannequin, so I need to adjust it. The arm is actually bent out a little bit more, so I'm going to go ahead and change that. And this is why I draw lightly, so that I can make those adjustments. So my arm is coming out this way. I have a little bit of a curve to it. And then it comes back in towards the leg here. I'm just gonna adjust. And I know it looks a little bit weird, but the length of the mannequin and the way the arm is settling is meeting up with the mid-thigh here. So just keep that in mind. If you were to stand up and kind of position your arm, you would see that. So now I'm going to come back in and I'm just going to do some refining. I can get rid of these heads here, those extra ones, so which is why I drew lightly. I'm just going to remove those, and then I'll come back and refine that head a little bit. It's a little more rounded on the mannequin here and tapers down here. So just going to start to come in and put these details in. You'll notice I moved my hand in a bit closer here also to kind of show that I'm tightening up on my sketching. And that makes a big difference because I have way more control now for that sketch. Okay, so I'm just refining at this point, coming back, making sure that these lines are crisp and that they're showing the view that I'm seeing here. And I actually have my joints up a little bit higher. These come down just a smidge on my mannequin here. And so now I'm going to focus on more of those details. So I'm using that mannequin, I'm referencing it, constantly looking back and forth to see how my sketch is matching up with the mannequin. And then I'll come back in and I'm going to put some shading in here after we're done. with tightening up my sketch a bit. So you can see, you know, I'm starting to put that chest area in. Your mannequin has that kind of line or that shape, and then this will be actually shaded here. I'm not worrying too much about that right now. I just want to get those shapes in place. So again, coming back down, have that joint, and then if you notice, the wood actually comes up to that joint and hides it just slightly. So depending on how you're looking at yours, you might see that shape there. And then I see a little bit of that joint here again, and then the curve of this one. And then that tapers down. So you can see the advantage of loosely sketching so that you don't have as much to erase. And really, even these sketch lines that I have, I will just shade over and it won't be a big deal. And you don't need to put the post in there, of course. If you really want to, you can, but that's not necessary. Joint again. This one comes down a little narrower here. And then I see that ball joint here for the foot. And then the feet are kind of like funky little, almost little boots. Okay, so that gives me a bit more definition on the figure here. And now I'm going to come back up and refine the arms a bit. So again, I have a little tighter of a pencil hold here. And I'm going to clean up these edges a bit. And remember, this is just practice, so do your best. I'm asking you to make 2 sketches just of the mannequin without putting them in any crazy positions, just to practice. And then once you've got 2 of those, you're actually going to go ahead and create a drawing that uses 2 mannequins in a positions of your choice and in a scene. So you're creating an actual scene with this. And remember, it's all about practice. The more you practice, the better you're going to get at this, and it's going to look really good if you take the time. Take the time to try it and to give it your best. Okay. So now that I have my shape drawn out and I've refined it a bit, I'm going to come in and I'm looking at my mannequin to see what is in shadow. Now this is a little bit challenging in the classroom. So essentially you're going to have to try to pick out where are the shadows on your mannequin. Do your best job as you can. Mine is a bit easier because I have some direct light overhead here that's helping me. There's a couple ways you can do your shading. So I tend to be more of a crosshatch or a light shader, building up that value. And if you remember at the very beginning, we did that in that value scale. So maybe this will make hopefully a bit more sense now that you're seeing it in action here. So this joint here is shaded in. I have some shadow underneath, so that's going to be the darkest. And then these lines that come up for the face, this is in shadow. So again, I'm just kind of lightly coming in with my pencil to give some crisp lines here. And then I've got a little bit of shade right on the edge, and then the head, of course. So that's rounded. And then my highlight is mostly on this side. So on here and up here are the highlights for that little head. I've got shadow here, and it's quite dark, so I'm gonna not be afraid to darken with my pencil. And there's a couple ways that you can shade if you are not comfortable just with a, you know, general shade with your pencil, a light touch. A lot of times people will do what's called cross-hatching, and I am a fan of cross-hatching. Cross-hatching is when you go in one direction and then you come back in another direction to help build up that layer. So for my arm here, I have the shadow underneath here. So I'm going to come in, and this is my cross-hatching. I'm going to come in with those lines and then come back over with some additional lines. And the thickness of those, or the proximity, the closeness of those, will help to show that value. So if I want to come back in and do some cross-hatching here, I can come back in this way and cross-hatch. There are other methods that you can do. These are the two that we're just going to talk about today, just to get you started. I'm going to come back in and we'll talk about different shading techniques, hopefully this semester before you all leave me. And so again, you can see the shadow is on the left side of my mannequin, so I'm just coming in with some of that cross-hatching. And then I have crisp line here. There's actually a little bit of shadow on this side. And I have the shadow from the arm crossing over here, so I'm going to put that in as well. And so I can come back in with my eraser and clean that up. And then my shadow up here is across this part of the arm. So I'm going to go back in here and refine that. I have a little bit here on this side. And then we have some very dark shadows here. Okay, so hopefully you're seeing the value start to emerge, and you're seeing how that value helps to make your mannequin look a bit more realistic, more three-dimensional, right? So you definitely do want to take the time to add that value in there, and to make sure that you, you know, spend a decent amount of time adding that. If you ignore it, you'll never develop those skills. So again, it's all about practice. So I'm going to come back in here. I have a shadow kind of towards the front this way, and that fades out to the side, so it's darkest here because of the way the light is hitting it. And on this side, it's darkest back here. It kind of fades out on the side. This is very dark. So I'm just putting those joint lines in there and then sketching around it. And I probably should spend more time on this, but I think you get the idea. I don't want to go too long. So you're going to do 2 mannequin sketches, just practice sketches, and then once you have completed those, you're going to move on and you're going to create 2 mannequins in a scene. Remember, they need to be 2 complete mannequins in the scene. Don't crop them. I will post some more directions on the Google Classroom for you, but I hope this helps you to get started.